Thanks for coming, everyone. We'll start off with a little bit of fun. A few questions first. So, question one, if you can just take a mental note of the answers. So a bat and ball costs $1.10 in total, but the bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? So take a note of that. Question two. So you can see two squares, A and B. Which is lighter, square A or square B? So again, please take a note of your answers. Okay, so the answers, I imagine a lot of people said 10 cents, square B was lighter. Someone shaking their head there, it's ahead of the game, probably predicting what comes next. Both those answers are wrong. And look, these are the sort of questions that are designed to sort of nudge our brain towards the wrong answer. The answers sometimes feel quite intuitive and easy and they pop into our head almost automatically, but they are actually wrong. And just to prove I'm not making it up, this was question one. So the bat costs $1 more than the ball, so the ball must be 5 cents. It's quite straightforward maths, but I think I've seen this question many times and I know the answer now, but 10 cents still pops into my head automatically. So it's an intuitive and easy answer, but it is wrong, as we can see. It's quite simple maths, but you know, we don't want to work it out. We just want an easy answer. So this one's almost unbelievable, but they are actually the same colour, and it's hard to get your head around. But what's happening is the context of the cone and the shadow is changing the colour in our mind. And I know there's a lot of people in the room that still don't believe it, but just keep an eye on square B. If you don't believe me, it doesn't change to there. And now it's quite clearly the same colour. So it's the context that's affecting our brain. And even though you now probably know that hopefully you see they are the same colour, when I put it back into context, our brain readjusts again and it looks like B is lighter. So look, the point with these questions to start off is, look, there's a lot going on in our minds at a subconscious level, at an automatic thinking level, that does affect how we process information. Question? Are we? Oh, sorry. No, question's not till the end, sorry. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes in our mind in terms of how we process information, how we make decisions. And a lot of that is happening at sort of a behind the scenes, sort of subconscious level. And those questions were some examples of that. And look, one model that hopefully a lot of people, I imagine a lot of people have seen, to explain this is these two thinking systems that we have. So system one and system two, and well represented by the tortoise and the hare. So system one is the automatic thinking mode that we have. It's fast, it's emotional, it's uncontrolled, it's effortless, and it's unconscious. So this is what gives us those quick and intuitive answers. So when a lot of you, I'm assuming, guessed that the ball cost 10 cents, that answer probably just came straight into your head. And that's the point. That came from system one. If you got a pen and paper out, you probably would have worked out that it wasn't 10 cents. Now system two, this is thinking in a traditional sense. So it's slow, logical, controlled, effortful, self-aware. This is when you lock yourself away and you've got to work something out that's difficult. So this is how we think, but we actually think much more with system one. And I'll give you another example. 5 times 2 is 10. You didn't have to think. The answer just pops into your head. There's no trick. That is the answer. Whereas if I say, what's 17 times 24? Everyone's like, oh no, that's hard. And unless you can give me my iPhone and I can work it out. I don't want to even think about that. You don't have an answer in your head. You need system two to work that out. Now, one of the key points is that system one, as I mentioned, does dominate our thinking because it's much easier. By definition, it is effortless. So as much as we can, we go through life trying to use system one because it makes our life easier. We're not having to think hard about every little decision we make. A lot of times we're just on autopilot. But of course, the fact that it does just to drive our decision making so much, it's important that we take it into account when we're trying to change consumer behaviour, when we're trying to get people to buy your brand versus someone else's brand. Because if we don't, we're missing out on a lot of the story, because system one does drive a lot of our decision making and our behaviour more than the rational system two side of our brain. Traditionally, though, it's been quite difficult to understand System 1 because it does happen at a subconscious level. If you ask someone, so why, tell me from your System 1 side of the brain why you made that decision, we can't explain it because it is subconscious. But thankfully, this is where the field of behavioural science in recent years has really been able to help us. So it's been able to help us understand this side of our brain. It's been able to help us understand what drives our automatic thinking. And which means we do have new tools to influence behaviour, to help us change behaviour, to help us obviously push people towards our brands and our products. So System 1, how does System 1 work? Look, it's driven by cognitive biases. So the way to think about it is we have this automatic thinking, but it doesn't happen randomly. It is driven by certain biases we all have in our heads. Now, what are biases? So these are shortcuts or stereotypes that we do employ in specific contexts. So, of course, the specific context will be a buying situation. In a buying situation, we buy X or Y because that's what we've automatically done. Now, from a marketing perspective, what behavioural science is teaching us is that we can leverage these biases to influence consumer behaviour. So we can influence System 1 thinking to make our brand feel like the easy and automatic choice. And the academic thinkers in behavioural science they've identified dozens and if not hundreds of biases that affect us in various situations. And some are going to be relevant to your category, some won't. So what I'm going to do is take you through some of the ones that are highly relevant to marketing and give you some examples of how companies are leveraging these in their marketing and their advertising. So the biases I'll take you through today: social proof, loss aversion, the Pratfall Effect, price relativity, and scarcity value. Okay, let's start with social proof. The bias is we are more interested in things if we see others are interested. And I'll give you an image here. So you've probably all been in this situation. You're looking for somewhere to eat. You're looking at different restaurants. Half the restaurants down the street are half empty. There's not many people in there, but there's one that is full and actually has a line out the front. And your brain's thinking, there must be something about that restaurant. All those people must know something. It's got to be better. I'm going to line up. And even though it's more inconvenient, rationally you should probably go to one of the other restaurants, but you think that's the choice I'm going to make. That is social proof. And nightclubs are very good at this. Line out the front and you go in and it's half empty. They're trying to create that impression that this is the place to be. So that is social proof. And it's a powerful impact it has a powerful role in our buying decisions. And look, this is, I think Singapore is great for queues. We see this all the time. This was actually the opening of the Krispy Kreme store in 2013, which doesn't exist anymore. But look, there was no other reason that people were lining up. Like the donuts weren't going to run out. It was just like, yeah, look, everyone's lining up. I want to be part of that. And there must be something about these donuts that there's people lining up out on the street for them. So what I'll do is I'll show some evidence for each of the biases as well, so you know that there's academic backing to these. This is a very well-known in behavioural science, well-known experiment where they were trying to encourage the reuse of towels. So if you stay in hotels, you see the sign, hey, good for the environment, don't wash your towels every day, please reuse them. So in the experiment, they tested a few different messages in room to see which was most effective in getting people to reuse their towels. So the first one was the environmental benefits. That's what you typically see in a hotel. Care about the environment, don't waste so much water, etc., etc. Based on that, 35% of guests reuse their towels. So pretty good result, maybe. The second message was a simple social proof message. Most past guests in their room reuse their towels. No other message. Didn't mention the environment, didn't mention anything else. And 49%. So it's an amazingly powerful factor that simply saying, hey, everyone else is behaving this way. It's our natural inclination as humans to copy that behaviour. And that's come from caveman days where that was the safest way to behave. And it still is in our subconscious brain now. As much as we like to think maybe we're a bit different, we tend to follow the herd in how we behave. So, how can we leverage this in marketing? Look, it's important to convince people your brand is highly popular. And look, that's easy to do when you are Coke and you're not Virgin Cola. But if you are a niche brand, this is where it's a bit challenging. You need to be a bit creative. And this is where marketing has a role. And it's things that you've seen, I'm sure, before. Terms like, we're the fastest growing, or we're the biggest brand in market X, and now you should buy us in Singapore. So it's creating this perception that this is a big brand, lots of people are buying it, so there must be something about the brand, so I should try it as well. Similar to the restaurant example. So I'll give you some examples of social proof in marketing. So this is using raw numbers without context. So iFlix, 10 billion minutes streamed. Sounds good. Is it good? I don't know. Netflix could be 1 trillion minutes streamed. We don't know, but that's the point. A raw number without context sounds impressive. Basecamp, 7,162 companies signed up last week. Is that good? Hard to say. It sounds impressive though. Wow, lots of companies are jumping on board. I should too. I should at least consider this brand. This is a classic approach to is claims around growth. It's one of the examples I just mentioned. So join us, we're part and become part of the fastest growing life insurance company. So they're probably not the biggest life insurance company, because if they were the biggest, they would say they're the biggest, but we're the fastest growing. And they might be a tiny brand, you don't know, but it's a way to be creative. And obviously there's a line to be drawn, you can't make things up, but it's a case of being creative with your messaging. Say, okay, there must be something about this brand. People are jumping on board, and they must have some qualities about them. Other tactics which you're probably quite familiar with, media logos, saying, okay, we were featured on this show or this news report. Social media proof. I can be sometimes quite cynical about the value of likes and followers, but showing that you've got thousands or millions of likes is a way to say, well, a lot of people love this brand. And reviews. So genuine customer testimonials are important, because social proof works better when it appears to be someone like us who's using the brand. So using genuine customers is better than using an actor, for example. Okay, so that was social proof. Let's look at loss aversion. Loss aversion is we feel the pain of losses more than the pleasure of equivalent gains. So this was well illustrated by this graphic on the back of a napkin from New York Times. So the pain from the loss is more than the pleasure from the gain. But I've added that point about it's the $100, just so you know it's the same amount of money if we're talking in monetary terms. So I lose $100, oh, hate it, it's horrible. I win $100, oh, that was nice. And that's how it goes. It's not an equal relationship. And this also drives lots of our behaviour in various contexts. And look, there's lots of evidence for loss aversion, but here's a local version from a survey we did. We asked people, would you take this bet on a coin toss? Hands up, who would take the bet? Only one person. Maybe because that was the client whose study we did for. And look, I think the thing is, classic economic theory, people studied economics, would say 100% of people should take this bet. The rational approach is to take this bet because the payoff is much higher than the potential loss. But in reality, because of loss aversion, and this is in a survey, 32% said they wouldn't take it. I bet if you actually were asking people to stump up the money, it would probably go down to about 1%, as we saw in the room. So I think most people the risk of losing the thousands too much. It's like, the 1,800 would be great, but no, I don't want to do it. And that proves that last point, that the potential pain of a $1,000 loss is worse than the potential gain of $1,800. So quite a powerful piece of proof there. So how is loss aversion leveraged in marketing? So what you can do is frame offers in terms of the loss that consumers will incur if they don't choose your brand, rather than necessarily the gain. So if you don't choose us, you're going to lose, rather than if you choose us, you'll gain. And losses can be in terms of money, of course, but also other factors that might be relevant, such as time, such as health, such as emotion, and wherever's relevant. And look, this, you might be thinking, maybe this is not right for my brand. It's not right for every brand, for every category, but in some situations, it fits really well. And I think one is mobile phones, anything where you're paying a tariff. So this was an example from Car Phone Warehouse, which is a UK mobile phone retailer. You could be wasting £194. So it's really, and we know that will have a bigger effect psychologically in that System 1 brain, then you could save 194 pounds. The idea of appealing to the loss is more powerful. Another one, stop losing money on advertising, and the image of the money falling out of the guy's pocket. So again, a clear appeal to loss aversion. Okay, so moving on to the Pratfall Effect. A little bit of fun on this one. Who is more likeable of these two celebrities? Jennifer Lawrence or Melania Trump? I know, putting aside who her husband is, of course, but okay, I won't do the hands, I'll just roll with it. I'm guessing I'd be pretty safe to say that it's Jennifer Lawrence. But Melania Trump, to me, she comes across as quite cold and unapproachable, and she's always got that stony look on her face. Whereas Jennifer Lawrence, if you look online, there's always lists of the most popular celebrities. She always tends to be up there in the top 10. And one of the theories about why she's well loved, obviously she's talented and she's done some great movies, but besides that, she's imperfect, like us. And how do we know she's imperfect? She falls over a lot in important moments. It would have been like me tripping over on the way up here. Much worse, because she did it in front of the entire world while accepting an Academy Award. The one on the right is her falling over on the red carpet. And she laughs it off. So she feels like very genuine and human. And that quote down below, you see that a lot. It's like, it just shows she's just like us. Sure, she's a millionaire and she's famous, but, you know, we identify with people who come across as a bit flawed and a bit normal. And this is the Pratfall Effect. The bias is we feel more positive towards things if they have faults. I mean, there's a bit more nuance to this bias. It doesn't happen in all contexts. If we think someone is completely terrible, it won't work. But if we think that generally they're competent, a few faults will actually enhance our perception of that person, that thing, or that brand. And it has relevance for branding and marketing. So I think we can all agree that people often don't trust marketing claims. Brands saying, we're amazing, we're brilliant, everything that you'll ever need is in our brand. And I think people can be generally cynical about that. But using the Pratfall Effect in marketing, it's admitting to limitations. That can actually enhance trust in your brand. And this can make your other claims more believable. Saying, look, we may not be the best in that, but trust us, we're amazing in all this. Now, this is a tricky one in some ways to leverage, because you don't want to get it wrong. You need to understand what are factors that are inconsequential or unimportant in buying decisions, and they're the things that you might want to admit you're not great in. And of course, that is an important role for research. Research can help you understand, okay, what are the things that, look, yeah, you can admit these aren't important, but really got to focus on these things. So, some evidence for the Pratfall Effect. And this is an experiment. Two groups were played the same recording of a man answering quiz questions. So he got 92% of the questions right. So again, the point is that it starts from you already assume that this brand or this person is competent. But the difference between the two groups is one group heard the man accidentally, on purpose of course, knocking over a cup of coffee. So he seemed a bit clumsy, got the questions right mostly, but a bit clumsy, a bit human. And then the two groups were asked how likeable was the man separately. And the group which heard the coffee spill rated the guy much more likeable. So it actually enhanced the perception of this man in their eyes because he'd spilled a cup of coffee. And this has been duplicated in various contexts across different experiments. So here's some examples of brands using the Pratfall Effect. This is the most famous, one of the most famous campaigns of all time. Avis, we're number 2, so we try harder. We're not the biggest brand, we're not the leading brand, but with us, we're striving to be number 1, so you'll get better service from us. And it was so successful in the end, they couldn't use it anymore because they became number 1. This is a great one. This is Unilever for Marmite, which is like the spread from the UK, and it's got a very strong taste, a bit like Vegemite where I'm from. And admitting not everyone loves it, but it is memorable. And I thought, surely this is appropriate for a durian. But I could not find any durian ads that use the Pratfall Effect. But the squinting on that kid's face, like, oh, this is disgusting. I mean, that's pretty gutsy to say that about your brand. but they know there's a huge sector that, you know, that swear by it. Budget airlines, which Piers was talking about it, they tend to say, look, you might not get all the perks of a Singapore Airlines, you're not getting your hot towels, but who cares about hot towels? We're going to get you there cheap. So that's admitting, and it's acknowledging that if you're getting a rock bottom price, you can't expect every perk. You know, you want to make sure the plane's not going to crash and you're going to get there cheaply, but we're not going to give you your hot towels. Look, the flip side of that is Stella Artois. They have a completely different message, which is, we're expensive. Sorry, but if you want good stuff, you've got to pay, and it's reassuringly expensive. But that means, look, we're not the cheapest, but we're the best. So that's the opposite of the Scoot approach. And I couldn't resist putting this one in. A lot of people say, where does our name come from? Where does 2CV come from? And anyway, this is one of the stories. The Citroën 2CV, which is a very famous French car. And this is a brilliant ad. I hope you can read the text. But they're using humour to compare themselves to much more expensive luxury brands. So they're faster than the Ferrari when they're going faster, if that makes any sense. As many wheels as a Rolls Royce, more room than a Porsche. So sort of a nudge, sort of wink, wink. Yeah, we're not a Porsche, but the line is, it's all, you know, the only car you'll ever need, all the car you'll need at a much, much lower price point. And the Citroën 2CV just sold a huge number of units over a long, long time. Okay, and price relativity. We can be persuaded to spend more by seeing a high-priced item, which makes the item we purchase seem of better value. So this is illustrated by the decoy price. $30 seems like a lot of money, but suddenly the $50 bottle's there and it feels better value. So marketers, we can control that point of comparison to push people towards a certain price. This is an example from The Economist, 3 price options. Option 2 is the decoy price. Why would you choose that? Option 3 is the most relevant or compelling offer because it feels like you're getting the online subscription for free. And this certainly came out in experiments. They asked people, which would you choose? And 84% chose option 3. No one chose the decoy price. But when they only showed the 2 options, suddenly 68% chose the cheap price. So having the 3 price options pushed people to spend a lot more. So that's price relativity in action. And we see this in a lot of places. So adding a premium price to push people towards a middle option and hopefully away from the low-priced option. We see it at movie theatres. Look, I might buy a small or maybe medium. Or if I'm buying the medium, I might as well spend the extra 50 cents and get the large. Okay, last one, scarcity value. When we perceive something to be scarce, it has greater value in our eyes. And look, this is a great experiment where Campbell's soup was on sale in a supermarket, and it was on. Initially, there was no restriction on purchase, no limit. People bought on average 3.3 cans each. They put the next part of the experiment, they put a sign up, limit 4 cans per person. It edged up, didn't make much difference in purchase. When they put limit 12 cans per person, it doubled. Nothing else changed. The product didn't change, the price didn't change, just simply this perception of scarcity. It had a really big impact on people's behaviour. And look, we see this all the time. Airline booking pages, which it always stresses you out. Oh no, only 3 seats left. So you want to book, and that's brilliant, really clever. Groupon, the countdown clock, this deal's going to run out, it's scarce, you better buy it now, otherwise you're going to miss out. And this was the Coke campaign in the US, which was people's names, and the fun part was finding your name. So the scarcity was part of the fun. If you finally find your name, you know, it's a great social media moment. Okay. So there's some biases, some final thoughts. There's plenty of biases that we all use to process the world and make decisions. I think from a marketing perspective and a research perspective, identify the biases that are relevant to your category. What does drive behaviour in your category for your brand? And of course, that's where research plays a big role, particularly qualitative research. And simply use them to guide your marketing decisions. So think, is your marketing, is your branding, is your website, is your pricing, is it working with the biases or is it working against them? Because what you ultimately want is, if you're working with biases, it will make your brand more likely feel like the easy choice to consumers. Thank you.
For James? Consumers are getting wiser to the marketing tactics like you talked about, and in fact you make reference to consumers not trusting marketing claims. The first two might fall because of that. That is, claims about being the fastest growing insurance company and loss aversion, which a lot of consumers now are very aware of that as classic sales closure techniques. I don't know whether the other two are certainly seem more powerful, but I'm just wondering whether the first two are going to be losing their effect.
Yeah, everything I've read about these biases is they do hold pretty fast because they happen. It does happen at a subconscious level, and I think what we need to remember, of course, is we think about this stuff all the time, whether we're working in marketing or working in research. So the average consumer is not spending more than a millisecond looking at these ads. So I think, sure, you've got some people who are savvy, looking and going, oh, I know what they're trying to do here, but most people, advertising is seen at a low processing or even a subconscious level. So I think that's where they can be most effective, even though they're quite obvious. It's still, everything I've seen is they still do work, except for potentially, as I said, quite a small savvy part of the market who might work in advertising or research or marketing.